Chris Watts, a name that, on the morning of August 13, 2018, meant nothing to the world. By nightfall, it would be everywhere. This is the true story of a man who destroyed the people who loved him most, and the investigation that brought him to justice in just 48 hours. Shannon Watts was 34 years old, full of life, and loved deeply by everyone who knew her. She sold wellness products online and documented her family life for thousands of followers on social media. Her daughters, Bella age 4 and Celeste age 3, were her entire universe. And with a third child on the way, a boy they would name Nico, the future had never looked brighter. Chris Watts was 33 years old. Quiet, steady, the kind of man neighbors waved to without thinking twice. He worked long shifts at an oil company, came home, helped with the girls. People who knew him used the same word over and over, normal, which is precisely what made what came next so devastating. Behind the picture-perfect Instagram posts, the Watts marriage was silently eroding. Chris had always been the quieter partner. Shannon made the decisions, managed the money, kept the household running. He went along with everything. But beneath that compliance, resentment had been building for years. By early 2018, he had stopped wearing his wedding ring. He had begun to change his body, his habits, his identity. He was preparing for something, though even he may not have fully known what yet. In June 2018, while Shannon was in North Carolina with the girl's visiting family, Chris began an affair with a co-worker named Nicole Kessinger. He told her his marriage was essentially finished. He described Shannon as controlling. He painted a picture of a man trapped and longing to be free. Within weeks, he was texting Nicole hundreds of times a day. He was already, in his mind, somewhere else entirely. His family had become, in the coldest sense of the word, a problem. Shannon had felt the shift long before she understood it. When she returned home in early August, the distance between them was almost physical. She confided in her best friend Cassandra, "Something is wrong with Chris. I just don't know what it is." She had no idea there was another woman. She had no idea how little time she had left to find out. On the evening of August 12, 2018, Shannon flew home from a business conference in Arizona. She arrived at the house just before 2 in the morning. She was 15 weeks pregnant. The girls were asleep. Chris was waiting. Whatever final conversation happened in that bedroom, it was the last one she would ever have. In the early hours of August 13, 2018, Chris Watts strangled his wife Shannon in their bed. She was 15 weeks pregnant with their son. He then went to each of his daughters' rooms, Bella, then Celeste, and smothered them. For lives ended in a single night, in the home where they had been loved, by the man who was supposed to protect them. When the sun came up, Chris did not call the police. He did not call anyone. He wrapped Shannon's body in the sheet from the bed, loaded her into his work truck, and placed the girls in the back seat. He drove 40 miles to the Chevy 319 oil work site, a remote location he knew well. He buried Shannon in a shallow grave. He submerged his daughters in separate crude oil storage tanks. Then he drove home, showered, changed his shirt, and drove to work. That afternoon, when Shannon's friend Nicole Atkinson couldn't reach her, she drove to the house and called police. Chris came home while officers were present, composed, measured, performing confusion. He told them Shannon had left after an argument. That evening, He sat before a local news camera and begged for his family's return. His voice cracked on cue. He looked directly into the lens. The performance was almost convincing. But investigators were already watching the scenes come apart. A neighbor's doorbell camera had captured Chris's truck backing out at 5:17 in the morning, loaded with what appeared to be large, heavy objects. Shannan's phone had never moved from inside the house. Her last ping was at 1:48, the moment she arrived home. After that, nothing. As news of the missing family went nationwide, Nicole Kessinger contacted the FBI herself. She shared everything, every text, every call, every conversation in which Chris had described his marriage as already over. She also shared something that made agents stop cold. On the morning of August 13th, within hours of the murders, Chris had texted Nicole asking if she wanted to go to dinner later that week. On August 15th, 2 days after the disappearance was reported, FBI agents sat Chris Watts down for a formal interview. 4 hours, he held his story. He didn't know where they were. Shannan had left. It had been an argument, but agents already knew the family was dead. They had one goal in that room: get him to tell them where the bodies were. Chris agreed to a polygraph test. He failed completely. When confronted with the results, the mask slipped. He asked for a moment. He looked at the floor. Then he confessed, partially. He claimed he had strangled Shannan after seeing her do something terrible to the girls. It was still a lie, but buried in it was something true, a location. Chevy 319. Investigators raced to the oilwork site. In a shallow grave near the perimeter, they found Shannan, still wrapped in the bedsheet from her own home. The girls took longer. Bella and Celeste were found submerged inside the crude oil storage tanks, small figures in total darkness, in cold oil. The man who had hidden them there had believed no one would ever look. He was wrong. On August 15, 2018, Chris Watts was arrested and charged with 6 counts of first-degree murder, 3 for Shannan, Bella, and Celeste, and 3 for Shannan's unborn child under Colorado's fetal homicide law. From the moment the missing persons call was placed to the moment of his arrest, 48 hours, the case was closed. The family was not coming home. The story consumed the world. Shannan's videos, her daughters laughing in the kitchen, her pregnancy announcements, the ordinary joys of a family's daily life, circulated everywhere. People who had never heard her name wept for her. What made the Watts case uniquely gutting was that Shannan had documented so much of her love. And now that love existed only on a screen, without anyone left to feel it. In February 2019, investigators traveled to the prison where Chris was being held and recorded hours of further interviews. He finally let go of the story about Shannan harming the girls. He confirmed what the evidence had already shown. He had planned it. He had decided. The reason, stripped of everything, was painfully small. He wanted a new life, and he did not want to pay child support. That was the value he had placed on 4 lives. In November 2018, to avoid the death penalty, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to all 6 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms with no possibility of parole. He would die in prison. The mercy he accepted was a mercy he had given to no one. The sentencing hearing was brief. Chris Watts sat and listened as Shannan's family delivered their impact statements. Her father, Frank, spoke through tears. Her mother, Sandra, addressed Chris directly, saying, "You destroyed our entire family. You're not a human being." Chris Watts said nothing in response. He was taken away in handcuffs and has never spoken publicly again. Shannan's parents established a foundation in memory of Shannan, Bella, Celeste, and Nico, dedicated to supporting families affected by domestic violence. Shannan's mother has said in interviews that she wakes up every morning and must remember it all over again. But she gets up. Because Shannan would have wanted her to. That is the kind of woman her daughter was. Criminologists have studied the Watts case extensively. The pattern Chris Watts fits is chillingly common. A man who suppressed emotion until suppression became impossible. Who experienced divorce not as a practical matter but as a humiliation. Who had wrapped so much of his identity in how others saw him that he could not face the public shame of failure. None of this excuses anything. But it is a warning. The most dangerous person is often the one everyone trusts. Chris Watts is currently serving 5 consecutive life sentences at the Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. He has given a small number of letters and interviews over the years, expressing something that sounds like remorse. Experts disagree on whether any of it is genuine. What is not in doubt? Shannan Watts, Bella Watts, Celeste Watts, and Nico Watts are gone. And the world is a lesser place for it. Shannan, Bella, Celeste, Nico. 4 people who deserved full lives, full of laughter, of growing up, of growing old, of being loved. Their story is told so it is never forgotten. And so that somewhere, perhaps, the signs are recognized before it is too late. If this documentary moved you, please share it. Subscribe for more true crime stories told with the respect every victim deserves. Thank you for watching.